Welcome to the Bedtime Tales, where each night brings you a story to drift away by, a place where mystery, memory, and dreams softly unfold. I'm your host, and tonight we board the train to Somnia, a myth whispered across timelines, seen by few and believed by none. In this story, you'll meet a lone passenger who steps aboard a train that shouldn't exist, a train with no known origin that glides beyond space, across centuries, and into forgotten histories, where passengers cannot leave and time does not follow the rules we know. Each carriage reveals echoes of lives that might have been, places that feel familiar yet never quite real, and a truth that memory alone is not enough to hold on to who we are. Because some stories don't happen once, they happen again and again until someone remembers them. So close your eyes, let the sound of the tracks ease your thoughts, and prepare to step aboard something beautiful, strange, and hauntingly timeless. Because here on the Bedtime Tales, no story is ever truly lost.
It began with a delay. The 11:42 night train was supposed to arrive long before the rain started. But the boards blinked, flickered, and eventually dimmed to black. By the time the power came back, only one line remained lit on the departure screen: Midnight Express, Platform 0. The man didn't remember seeing a Platform 0 before. But the station was old, the signs often wrong, and he was tired enough not to question it. The storm outside had deepened into a dull roar. He wanted warmth, silence, motion, anything that wasn't the wet, humming concrete of the terminal. He stepped onto the platform. The train stood there waiting, quiet and long, its shape shadowed and unfamiliar. Its windows shimmered like oil, reflecting more stars than the night should hold. No one called out. No conductor waved him forward. Yet the doors slid open, slowly, as if they had been expecting him. Inside, the air was warm. Soft golden lamps lined the aisles. Velvet seats, old, polished, worn in places, faced inward, like in trains of another time. The carriage gave off the faint scent of lavender and dust. Somewhere, faint piano music played. Only a few passengers sat scattered along the corridor. An elderly man in a military coat slept beneath a wool blanket. A boy held a wooden toy train with hand-painted wheels. Across from him, a woman dressed in pale blue turned the pages of an old newspaper. He caught a glimpse of the date, August 3, 1892. The man blinked. But when he looked again, she was folding it neatly, as if nothing was strange. He took a seat near the center, not far from the observation window. Rain still tapped against the glass. But the platform, Platform 0, had vanished. There was only mist now, and beneath the mist, a silver rail glowing faintly in the dark. With a soft chime, the train began to move. It was quiet at first. Almost a floating sensation. The kind of movement that could easily be mistaken for a dream. The lights dimmed, and a voice whispered overhead. Somnia Express departing. Next destination, unknown. Please remain seated. No one else reacted. Outside the window, the city slipped away. But instead of streets and buildings, the landscape turned wrong. Trees grew impossibly tall, their trunks knotted with vines. The air outside shimmered with heat despite the night. The moon, or something like it, hung low and red in the sky, casting light in strange directions. The tracks no longer curved or swayed. They moved in a perfectly straight line through an impossible wilderness. And beyond the trees, something large moved, slow, towering, ancient. The man stood, pressed his hand to the glass, and stared. It was a jungle. Not just a forest, not something untouched, but something impossibly old. Ferns taller than houses. Reptiles with long necks grazing calmly near steaming ponds. A bird-like creature with a wingspan the size of a sail soared briefly past, then vanished between clouds. The woman with the newspaper spoke quietly, not turning her head. "This isn't the past. It's somewhere sideways." The man turned to her, startled. "Sideways?" She smiled faintly. "That's what most people call it, until they forget how." He didn't understand. "Where are we going?" he asked. She shrugged gently, folding the paper again. "We don't go anywhere. The train does. And sometimes, if it wants to, it lets us see." The boy with the wooden toy tapped it against the window. "They are watching," he whispered. "Who?" the man asked. The boy didn't answer, just kept tapping. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The voice returned, but it was different now. Slower. Less like an announcement, more like a whisper carried by the motion of the train itself. "Warning. Cross-vector fluctuation detected. Observational field unstable. Prepare for next passage." The lamps flared once and dimmed. The glass of the window began to ripple like water. The jungle outside grew hazy, as if evaporating. The man gripped the seat. The floor beneath his feet no longer felt like steel, more like something breathing, gently, beneath him. And then, nothing. No sound. No color. Just white mist, endless, soft as milk. Then shapes returned, slowly. Towers of stone. Lanterns flickering in windows. Cobblestone roads. A sky filled with smoke and stars. A castle loomed ahead, crowned by flickering torches. Men in armor pointed upward. Women in cloaks raised their lanterns. Bells rang somewhere distant. They were all looking at the train. The man stared back through the glass, heart beating slower now. The child's voice came again, but this time it was behind him. "We've been here before." And just like that, the train moved on, gliding silently toward another moment no one else would believe. The train glided forward without ever seeming to accelerate. No tracks clacked beneath it. No smoke, no engine. Just a low hum, like the sound of wind remembered in a dream. Outside, the medieval village had vanished. In its place, trees. Not ordinary trees, but giants. Towering trunks wrapped in vines as thick as ropes. Their leaves shimmered faintly, glowing with dew or something older. Mist curled low across the jungle floor, and the sky, if it was sky, pulsed in a dull amber hue. The sun hovered too close. The air looked heavy with memory. The man sat still, his fingers pressed to the window. In the seat beside him, the boy had fallen asleep holding his wooden train. Across the aisle, the woman from before, the one with the old newspaper, was gone. In her place sat someone new. A woman in a rust-colored coat, her hands resting atop a thick leather journal. Her face was lined, her eyes tired but bright, as if she had been reading strange things for a very long time. "You're new," she said without looking at him. "So is the forest," he replied. She nodded. "You'll see it again. Not always the same, but it comes back. Places like this don't forget easily." He hesitated. "Have you been here before?" "Not exactly. But the train remembers. Places. Times. Moments where things slipped." She tapped the journal once with her fingers. "I write them down." He leaned forward. "What is this place?" She looked out the window at a massive stone arch tangled in vines, not built, but grown, as though shaped by hands older than language. No one knows. Some think this was Earth long before memory. Some say it's a branch of Earth, like a dream Earth. Others think it's what we become after we burn down the real one. She flipped open her journal. Sketches filled the pages, symbols carved in stone, spirals in ash, trees shaped like creatures mid-scream. "But the interesting part," she said, "is that this isn't the first time people have seen it." He blinked. "What do you mean?" She slid a folded page toward him, brittle, yellowed, marked with ink. 1956, Brazilian pilot reports forest rising from the clouds during high-altitude storm. Visibility lost. Recovered flight path suggests impossible location. 1979, radio transmission from a Soviet expedition near Lake Baikal mentions green sky and petrified trees that whisper. Tape later corrupted. 2023, tourist in Guatemala reports seeing a train floating through jungle canopy. Blurry footage deleted from phone. Memory reportedly hazy. Scientists call it a time anomaly, or a soft rift. Some think it's a side effect of quantum instability, she said. But most just call it a myth. He swallowed. And this train? Same one. Every time. She closed the journal and stared out the window. It only shows itself to people already slipping. He looked at her. Slipping? From their timelines. From their lives. From memory. From the world. They sat in silence for a while. The train turned. No sound, no lean, just the forest shifting around them like a set on a stage. Then the sky flickered. Not thunder, not lightning, a memory of flame. Red swept the air, briefly illuminating something tall in the distance, a totem made of bone and fire-blackened wood. Around it, people knelt. They wore no modern clothing, only cloaks of woven grass and ash. One raised their face toward the train and opened their mouth in silent awe. "They've seen it before," the woman whispered. "Or maybe they're waiting for it." A low sound echoed through the car, not from the outside, but within the train. It felt like a bell rung too far below to be heard clearly. The boy stirred in his sleep. His toy train slid from his lap and tapped against the floor. Then the lights dimmed. A voice crackled overhead, but different this time. Not the formal announcements, not the strange whispers. This one was clearer. More human. Crossbone breach acknowledged. Temporal fragments detected. External observation field breached. Maintain containment. The woman closed her eyes and exhaled. "What was that?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and looked at him, really looked at him, and said, "Have you ever met yourself?" He stared. "No." She nodded. "You might." The jungle outside had begun to warp, trees twisting into shapes they shouldn't take. The sun dipped beneath the horizon too fast, and the sky darkened to purple. Somewhere ahead, a silver flicker appeared, a wall of light bending across the tracks. The woman whispered, "Brace for slip." The train moved on. The flicker ahead became a wall, bright, silent, silver-white. It wasn't light, not exactly. More like the suggestion of it, vibrating softly across the horizon like heat above asphalt. Then it swallowed them whole. No jolt. No scream of metal. Just transition. The sky outside turned a deep, electric indigo. The forest was gone, replaced by a sprawling city of sharp towers and pulsing lights. Roads hung in the air with no supports. Glass bridges spanned impossible distances. On distant buildings, billboards blinked in languages he didn't recognize, yet he somehow understood. The Phantom returns. Seen again, third sector, night rotation. The sleeper train lives. The train coasted through this gleaming world as if invisible, yet on the ground, people stopped and pointed. Some recorded. Some bowed. Others simply stared, open-mouthed, their eyes full of awe or fear. In the reflection of the glass, the man could see his face, tired, uncertain, and something else, someone standing behind him. He turned. The woman in the rust-colored coat was gone. In her place sat a younger man. Pale, sharp-featured, wearing a jacket made of shimmering mesh. Across his face, faint circuitry blinked, part tattoo, part machine. "You're lucky," the man said. His voice was smooth, careful. "Most people never stay this long." "Where is she?" the passenger asked. The man smiled faintly. "Gone. Or forward. Or maybe you imagined her. This place gets slippery." "Where are we now?" Neo Karasu. Year 2360. Or 2359, depending which archive you check. He leaned closer. "They call the train the ghost in transit here. Some think it's a weapon. Others think it's a god." The man swallowed. "You're from here?" The stranger's smile faded. "I was born during the rain season of Axis 4. But I boarded the train in 1911. A pause. That didn't make sense. He chuckled. "Yes. Exactly." Outside, a parade of drones flew in a tight formation, releasing trails of shimmering gas. They formed a sigil in the sky, a circle around a rectangle, then a line through both. The stranger looked up. "They're calling to us. Again." Screens across the city blinked and distorted. One zoomed into the train's windows, and the image of the passenger appeared, flickering like old tape. "Are they trying to communicate?" "They've always tried. Some think it's their religion. Others just want to catch a glimpse before it vanishes again." The lights in the carriage pulsed. Then the intercom returned, but this time in a female voice, precise and slow. "External signal received. Attempted synchronization failed. Passenger variant detected, duplication anomaly. Preparing to correct." The man stood. "Wait, duplication." Behind him, a soft click. He turned. There, just 2 carriages down, a figure sat in the corner, face obscured by shadows. Same jacket. Same shoes. Same hands folded in the same way. Him. He stepped forward slowly. As he approached, the figure looked up, same face, just older. Tired eyes. A line of silver at the temples. But otherwise, him. They stared at one another. The older version smiled gently. "You're almost ready," the older self said. "Not yet. But almost." "Ready for what?" "To understand." Behind them, the stranger from Axis 4 stood motionless, his eyes glowing now with circuitry. The older self turned to leave. "You won't remember this clearly. But it'll stay with you. That's how the train works. And then, before the man could ask more, the car was empty. The city outside distorted, the lights folding in on themselves. The towers collapsed into lines, the drones froze mid-air, and all color bled away into white. The voice returned. Departure in progress. Please remain unseated. The train lurched for the first time. Outside, total darkness. Then stars. Thousands of them. A spiral of galaxies stretched across the window like a river of glass. The man fell into his seat, breath caught somewhere between awe and silence. The stranger, still beside him, murmured, "That wasn't a jump. That was a memory remembering you." The stars outside didn't look right. They didn't twinkle. They pulsed, softly, rhythmically, like breaths being taken in a sky that wasn't meant to breathe. The man stared, unsure if the train was moving through space, time, or memory. Or all three. Or something worse. Inside the carriage, the stranger with the circuitry in his skin was gone. No trace. No impression in the seat. The boy with the wooden train had returned. Still asleep. Still holding on. And ahead, faintly glowing in the corridor, was the woman's journal, the one from before, left neatly on an empty seat. He picked it up. The page it lay open to was dated crudely in pencil, Theory 7, the witness effect. Some believe the train doesn't move on its own. It appears only when someone is watching for it, needing it, pulling it into existence across timelines. This is the witness effect, the idea that observation not only influences the train's appearance, it summons it. Below the note were dozens of scribbled headlines. Retired pilot claims to see phantom train above Siberia, 1984. Amateur astronomer spots object in sky matching railcar shape, 2007. Drone footage captures unknown vehicle over Egyptian ruins. Footage corrupted, 2022. Forum post, I saw a train in the sky over the Andes. It looked alive. Deleted. A chill crawled along his neck. Not from fear, but recognition. He remembered seeing a news report once, years ago, about a UFO sighting over Tokyo. The footage had shown a blur. A long blur. Like a line drawn across the clouds. At the time, he'd thought, that looks like a train. Had he seen it then? Had it seen him? The lights flickered. A new voice echoed through the train, lower, raspier, older. Observation detected. Witness verified. Initiating convergence. He rose and followed the corridor forward. The windows along the next car were sealed with frost. Beyond them, the world had shifted again. Ash rained from the sky. They were gliding over a city reduced to broken towers, its streets flooded in dark water. Somewhere in the distance, a massive solar flare cracked through the clouds, painting everything gold and burning. A siren echoed below, looping, mechanical, tired. On the platform of a half-collapsed station, a lone figure stood with a flare. They held up a sign, "We see you." The train did not stop. But the man pressed his hand against the glass, and for the first time, he felt it pressing back. A memory surfaced, sharp and sudden. His mother, reading stories to him about ghost ships, time travelers, worlds that looped back on themselves. She once told him, some stories don't end. They just circle until someone remembers them again. He turned the page in the journal. The Witness Theory Collective. Formed by fringe scientists, conspiracy theorists, and psychologists who reported shared dreams of a train that glided between stars and centuries. Some claimed to have boarded it in their sleep. Others never woke up. Below the note was a photo, taped in crookedly. A black and white image of a train window, and his face staring out. He staggered back. The photo was dated 1963. The train shuddered. Outside, the sky cracked, not with lightning, but with a rupture. A clean slice across the horizon, like torn fabric, glowing at the edges. It didn't lead to another city or another sky. It led to nothing. The man backed away from the window. Suddenly, the overhead lights blinked red. Witness verified. Breach imminent. Identity echo in progress. He turned and saw the conductor. For the first time. He was tall, ageless, and wore no uniform. His eyes were covered by a black band, and his voice, when he spoke, came from everywhere. You have seen too much. You have seen yourself. The man opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught. Instead, the conductor raised a single finger and pointed to the last car. Your station awaits. The frost on the windows cracked. The boy with the wooden train stirred again, eyes fluttering open. He looked up at the man and whispered, "It's always the same. The witness always walks back." The corridor to the final car stretched impossibly long. With each step, the overhead lights dimmed by degrees, until even his shadow faded, swallowed by the pale hush around him. The journal in his hand grew warmer, as though the pages inside were pulsing. Breathing. The door at the end stood open. Waiting. He stepped inside. There were no rows of seats here. Just a long, cathedral-like space, wider than it should have been. The floor was black glass, perfectly reflective. Above him, a vaulting ceiling stretched into fog, lit with a soft pulse, like the heartbeat of some sleeping god. Passengers stood silently in the room. Not seated, standing. Facing outward. Watching. And the moment he entered, they turned. One by one. They weren't strangers. They were versions of himself. Some old, some younger. Some wearing uniforms he didn't recognize. Some scarred, limping. One had an oxygen mask over his face. Another held a photo in his hands, a woman, smiling. Each wore a different life. Each stared at him like they'd been waiting. The room flickered. Suddenly, he stood among them. Not walking, just there, now in their circle. The air felt weightless, like thought. Across from him, the version in the center raised his hand. Older. Worn. Eyes soft. You've made it to the last car, the older self said. The man swallowed. What is this place? This is what's left, the older version replied. When the train has shown you everything. When time gives up trying to hold you. The passengers around him began to whisper, but not with words. With memories. He could feel them, choices not made. Lives not lived. Loves lost in moments that hadn't happened yet. This is somnia, the older self said, gently. Where the selves that might have been, remember you. The conductor stepped out of the fog behind them. No longer a shadow, he now wore a coat made of stars. Literally, constellations stitched in endless motion across its folds. In his hand was a lantern, flickering with a flame that seemed to hold 1,000 tiny trains looping within. He spoke. You were not chosen, witness. You called the train. The man looked down. I don't remember. You will. That's what this place is. Not an ending, a remembering. The room faded again. Now he stood alone on the train platform. Rain fell sideways. Signs blinked with dates that changed when he looked away. A voice on the loudspeaker spoke in 3 languages at once. Behind him, the train waited again. He turned to the edge of the platform, where a gate opened into the unknown. A station built of starlight loomed ahead, arches spiraling into the fog of eternity. The passengers behind him had changed. No longer alternate selves. Now they were people he'd forgotten. The woman in the rust-colored coat. The boy with the wooden train. The stranger with circuits in his skin. The sleeping man in the military jacket. The woman with the newspaper from 1892. Even the version of him who had first boarded the train. All watching. All silent. He stepped toward the edge of the train and asked the conductor, "Am I supposed to leave now?" The conductor's voice was softer now. "Some do. Some wait longer. Some ride forever." The wind stirred. Far off in the sky above the station, a circle of golden light opened, like the eye of a great memory waking up. The journal in his hands flipped open by itself, pages fluttering until they stopped on the first page. There, written in handwriting he finally recognized as his own. "You called the train because you forgot who you were. Now it remembers for you." He stood there for a long time, as the lights within the train dimmed again, one by one. His own face reflected back at him from the window, not younger, not older, but still. Still moving. Still watching. And then, gently, the door to the station closed. He had made his choice. The train moved on. Somewhere far away, or maybe long ago, the rain began to fall again. A quiet drizzle over the rusted roofs of a rural town. Over the domes of observatories hidden in mountain fog. Over the windows of a sleepless man, hunched at his desk, reviewing satellite logs that didn't make sense. The train was gone. But the hum remained. In places where the air felt just slightly too still, or clocks ran just a second too slow, or a shadow crossed the wall with no one to cast it, the feeling of something passing lingered. Not an engine. Not a vehicle. A presence. A ripple left behind. In a lab near Greenland, a small team of astrophysicists reviewed new data from a long-range satellite array. One node had caught an electromagnetic signature just before its system crashed. A long, even pulse, followed by a short one, then 2 more long. It repeated 6 times before silence. The pattern didn't match anything known. Not solar flare, not aircraft, not seismic. One of the researchers thought it resembled railway code. She didn't say it out loud. Not then. Elsewhere, a man awoke in a hotel bed in Paris, trembling. He had dreamed of a train that moved through stars. He couldn't remember how he got there, or what he saw, only the feeling of faces watching him. Faces he somehow knew. He looked in the mirror. He didn't look older, but he felt used. Like something had remembered him and placed him back. A child in Kyoto drew a long silver train in her notebook. When asked where she saw it, she pointed upward and said, "It goes across the moon." Her mother smiled nervously. "Like a rocket?" The child frowned. "No. A train. It has windows." It looked back at me. In the quiet corners of the internet, stories resurfaced. Blurry photos. Chopped audio recordings of distant metallic hums. A single frame from an old home movie showing a rail car floating above the ocean, too far to be real, too clear to be a mistake. It was always seen in passing, always gone before proof could hold. They called it names. The phantom of the rails, the clockless carriage, the dream train, and in older texts, simply, somnia. One fringe group of scientists, long dismissed as eccentrics, built a map of all reported sightings. The pattern wasn't linear. It was spiral-shaped, curling outward, like the rings of a tree or the shape of a fingerprint. They began to believe the train wasn't moving through time, but around it, touching key moments, looping, watching. They formed a collective, underground, quiet, and called themselves the Witness Theory. Their belief was simple. The train didn't appear randomly. It appeared where someone was ready to see it. When memory slipped. When identity cracked. When something in the soul whispered for a different track. But in the end, no governments confirmed its existence. No hard data ever survived longer than a moment. And those who tried to prove it often disappeared. Not physically, but mentally. They forgot what they were chasing. Some claimed they saw it one last time in their dreams, not as a machine, but as a place. A refuge. A loop. A mirror. A myth. No one could say for certain. But every so often, across quiet skies or mountain roads or ocean mist, a shape would pass. Too long, too silent, too patient. And if you looked just right, if you caught it at the corner of your knowing, you might hear a voice whisper just beneath the hum of the world. Somnia Express departing. Next destination, unknown. Please remain seated.